South Africa, my race is called colored. And it's a very stressful term to use in America because I know it's a derogatory term.
Right.
But I mean, that's what we are called.
When I recorded that review of Tyla's music, that was a couple of days ago, right? I had no idea that literally the following day, everybody would be talking about how Tyla flopped, her mixtape / EP flopped. And I said in that review that a lot of the hate towards Tyla is over exaggerated and over the top. And I stand on that. You guys, this is abnormal. I keep seeing people on here saying, oh, Tyla just should have explained. Her team just should have explained. They should have just explained to us what colored was and everything would have been fine. And to that, I say, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe any of you guys who say that. Let me tell you guys something. You can't trick me. You understand? I went to school in America. I've grown up in America pretty much my entire life as an immigrant, as an African immigrant at that. I've lived in America since I was 2 years old. Do you understand? I've gone through the American education system, K through 12 college, right? I've consumed American media. I've consumed American pop culture. And one thing I can say that is true across the board, regardless of race, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of education level in this country, you are not socialized or taught to be curious about the rest of the world. You're not. We are not. By and large, we are not. Like everything in America and the way that American society functions, like I said, the education system, media reinforces that. It reinforces the fact that we are not curious about the rest of the world. And that's how I know when you guys keep saying all she had to do was explain. Y'all are liars. Y'all are liars. A lot of what underpins this discussion around Tyla is American arrogance. It's American arrogance. It's this idea that everybody in the world needs to conform to how things are done in America. And that, I think that's crazy, guys. I think that's so insane. And the reason why, and like to further prove how I know that even if Tyla and her team gave a 1-hour lecture on apartheid and the history of colonialism and slavery in South Africa, even if she did all those things, I know for a fact, without a shadow of a doubt, that there still would have been people saying, well, I don't care about none of that. I ain't calling you color. I ain't calling. Y'all would not have been okay with it. And look, I even have recent evidence to prove y'all would not have been okay with it. Was it not earlier this year? Was it not earlier this year, this very year, 2025, when Zulu people from South Africa were appalled by the Zulu parade in New Orleans, were upset that their ethnic group, their nation, was being displayed as a minstrel show, basically, as they were being mocked. Their culture was being displayed in minstrelsy. What did that not happen this year? And what was the response from Americans? What was the response from Black Americans? Was it not, well, we don't really care about that. We don't really care about that because this has been going on here for 100 years. Like, y'all not about to stop nothing. This is what we do. This is how we do. Did that not happen? Am I making that up? And am I imagining that? Was that not the response from Americans, from Black Americans to South African, to Zulu people about the use of their culture, their ethnic identity, and displaying it in a minstrel parade? Was that not the response? That's how I know what all of you guys keep saying, oh, all Tyla had to do was explain, it would have been okay. You guys are lying. Y'all are lying. You guys are lying. You guys are lying. As I said before, a lot of what underpins this discussion is just American cultural hegemony and American arrogance and expecting the entire world to do things the way people do things in America. Americans are not curious. We are not curious. Like, I'm saying this as a collective. I'm not talking about you individually. Americans are not curious about the rest of the world, and they are for damn sure not curious about Africa. Let's be honest, guys. Like, let's be completely honest here. Like, I'm sick of the lies.
Not once in that video did Tyla expect Black Americans to refer to her as colored. All she did in that video is just let you know that in her culture, this is what she's referred to. Respectfully, too. And also considering, she was very considerate. She mentioned that that word is a funny word in America. But yet, Black Americans have ran with this and have made it something that it's not. We have been forced as Africans to learn about American history, Black American history. We have been forced to educate ourselves on slavery in your country, okay? In schools, on social media, we have had no choice. So we know about your history. We learn about your history. But you guys don't know anything about us. And this goes to show that you're not even willing to learn. You call yourself African, but you know nothing about us. And when we try to educate you, you throw it in our faces and you take complete offense to it.
Hello guys, and welcome to the Joy Report, where we get an outsider's view with an insider's clarity. When Tyla's old interview clip resurfaced, where she called herself colored, the internet went into a full meltdown. Suddenly, social media timelines were filled with outrage. American users, many of whom had never even heard of South Africa's unique racial classifications, jumped to the conclusion that Tyla had used a racial slur. To them, colored was a word dripping with historical pain, a reminder of segregation, colored-only signs, and the Jim Crow era. But here's the thing, that's the American story. And the American story is not the only story. In South Africa, the word colored has an entirely different meaning, and Africans are making it crystal clear. If you don't know our culture, maybe sit this one out and learn before you come for one of them. Before we proceed, all credit goes to the creators of these videos. Let me play you a few more videos and I'll come back with my final commentary.
I'm American. I lived in South Africa for the first half of 2016 and the latter half of 2017. And here's what everybody's getting wrong about Tyla. First off, Tyla's colored. Oh yeah, she's colored through and through. She's not colored in one place and black in another place. She's not, she's colored. And it's an important distinction to make because being colored in South Africa versus being black in South Africa have two vastly different implications as to basically what outcomes to expect out of life. And it's specifically due to skin color or race, so to speak. Basically, the difference between America and South Africa in terms of race is unlike in America, which had the one drop rule, meaning any amount of African made you black. In South Africa, there was a separate racial classification made for mixed people. With the exception of Cape Malay people, most colored people are some sort of mix of various, corners of the globe that had migrated to South Africa during the pre-colonial periods, plus like native Khoi and San people in South Africa, plus like some kind of African, some kind of Xhosa, some kind of Zulu, or the other southern ethnic African groups that was like down there. Oh, and a little bit white, but not an exorbitant amount. A lot of people like to equate colored people in South Africa with like Creole people in the United States, and that's not what it is. Colored people are more like Latino people, specifically kind of like Dominicans, where it's like they're mixed with previous colonial powers and, another set of like almost like Asiatic, some sort of people, and then a mix of like a little bit of African, but the dominant culture, the way that they constructed race at the time, stigmatized the African presence within the person's heritage, right? And in South Africa, these implications were very de jure, very stark, very overt, very much codified in law, right? If you were colored, there were very specific advantages that you had over black people, like period. And it could be as simple as passing a comb through your hair that would decide whether you lived like here or there, whether you lived in a shipping container or a, modest home of some kind. Whereas colored people experienced discrimination and displacement and all sorts of those sort of things under apartheid, they didn't experience it to the same extent that black people experienced it. So say, for example, colored people still lived in these zones that were still like very much under white control. They were still excluded from participating in voting and things like that. But in contrast, black people were schlepped off into these like homelands, what they called them. And these lands were actually like excluded from South Africa. So they made like different countries out of these places, and people had to, if they wanted to like go work in South Africa, i.e. like 30-mile train right away, they had to carry these passes. So black people always had to carry these passes if they ever wanted to like pass the checkpoint to like go to South Africa, i.e. like travel 2 blocks again to like, you know, get their basic needs to go bring back home, whatever, what have you. Colored people didn't have those requirements. My experience with colored people in South Africa, bear in mind I was studying in the Western Cape. If you ask the plebeian version of me, I'll tell you they were racist. If you ask the astute, sophisticated academic that I am, I would say that colored people, due to their mixed race heritage, were by and large placed above black people in various aspects of life in South Africa, and many colored people had internalized this narrative. And a lot of colored people who do not espouse this narrative had gone through an extensive unlearning process to reach there. This idea that like, oh, don't say you're colored. Colored is a slur. I wouldn't go there. Because again, colored doesn't equal black. They're not saying like black in a mean way. They're talking about a totally different set of people that had totally different status in their countries than like black people did.
Let's break this down. In the United States, colored is outdated and offensive. It was used during a time when black Americans were treated as second-class citizens, forced into separate schools, bathrooms, and neighborhoods. The anger that comes with that word is valid, but it's rooted in a very specific historic and cultural context. In South Africa, however, the term colored refers to a multiracial ethnic community with deep roots going back centuries. This community is made up of people whose ancestry often includes indigenous African, European, and Asian heritage, shaped by colonial history, migration, and cultural blending. Far from being an insult, colored is a formal classification under South Africa's racial categories, one that is recognized socially and even in government records. It's not something said to demean. It's an identity that's embraced with pride. Tyla grew up in that environment. She's Zulu, Irish, and Mauritian Indian, a true reflection of South Africa's diverse heritage. She probably identifies as both black and colored because in her world, those identities coexist. There's no either or. But when Americans saw her call herself colored, they stripped away that context and tried to force her into America's racial framework, a framework that doesn't fit South Africa's lived reality. And that's where Africans started clapping back. On TikTok, South Africans and other Africans were posting history lessons, breaking down how race is understood differently outside of the US. They were sharing personal stories about what it means to be colored, explaining the food, the language, the music, and the shared community bonds. They weren't just defending Tyla. They were defending their culture from being flattened into someone else's narrative. Some posts blatantly told Americans, "You're not the global authority on race." Others pointed out the irony. The same people preaching diversity and inclusion were unwilling to accept a cultural reality that didn't match their own. When the backlash first hit, Tyla tried to avoid the conversation. On The Breakfast Club, she admitted she didn't want to explain too much because she feared her words would be twisted and misunderstood, which, judging by the online outrage, was exactly what happened. But as the criticism kept growing, she eventually spoke up. She made it clear that she's not telling Americans to start calling her colored. She's saying that in her cultural context, that's part of her identity, and she will not erase it just to make other people comfortable. She reminded everyone that she knows she's a black woman, but she's also colored, and those two truths can exist side by side. This wasn't just about one artist and one word. It turned into a bigger conversation about how Americans often assume their experiences define the global conversation on race, and Africans pushed back hard against that idea. Many pointed out that American media rarely takes the time to understand Africa's diverse cultures. The continent is often reduced to a single story, when in reality, it's made up of thousands of ethnic groups, languages, and histories. The Tyla controversy for many became a symbol of how quickly ignorance can spread when people refuse to learn. Even celebrities joined the conversation. Cardi B, never one to shy away from speaking her mind, publicly defended Tyla. She called out the constant online hate Tyla gets, noting that even when Tyla barely says anything, people still find reasons to drag her. Cardi made it clear that the attacks weren't just mean, they were unfair and uninformed. Her defense carried weight, not just because of her influence, but because it showed that even outside of Africa, some people were willing to listen and understand the nuance. And that's what this whole thing comes down to. Nuance. Words don't have the same meaning everywhere. History changes context. A term that's painful in one place can be neutral or even empowering in another. Africans are tired of having to explain this every time a cultural difference comes up, but they'll keep doing it because the alternative is letting misinformation spread. As many South Africans have pointed out, if someone from another culture tells you what a word means to them in their context, the respectful thing to do is listen. You don't have to adopt it, you don't have to agree, but you also don't get to tell them they're wrong about their own identity. The Tyla Backlash could have been a moment for cultural exchange, a chance for Americans to learn something new about South Africa and its people. Instead, for many, it turned into a case study in how quickly people judge without seeking understanding. But thanks to the Africans who spoke up, the conversation is shifting. More people now know that colored in South Africa is not the same as colored in America. More people are realizing that global conversations about race require more listening and less assuming. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. The world is bigger than one country's history. There are entire cultures that exist outside of America's lens. If you're serious about unity, about understanding, about truly respecting diversity, then we have to let go of the idea that our personal experience is the universal one. So here's the question for everyone watching. When someone from a different culture shares their truth, will you actually hear them? Or will you keep forcing them into the boxes your own history built? Because as the Tyla situation proves, ignorance spreads fast, but understanding, that can spread just as quickly if you're willing to learn. So what do you all think? Do you think Americans are too quick to project their culture onto the rest of the world? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would love to keep this discussion going. Otherwise, that's it from me. I also have a few playlists on my channel, and if you enjoy such kind of content, please click up here and enjoy. Also, consider subscribing, liking and sharing because it helps me grow my channel and helps YouTube recommend this video to a wider audience. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, the Joy Report out.